The Roman Empire, the mightiest civilization the world had ever known. For centuries it was a beacon of order, of unmatched power. But even empires can crumble. And Rome's greatest threat didn't come from some rival kingdom across the sea, but from within its own borders. Those warriors, they were called barbarians by the Romans, wild tribes from the dark forests of Germania. And they would bring the mighty empire to its knees. The question is, how? Why? To understand that, we have to go back, way back, to a time long before Julius Caesar marched on Gaul, before Rome was even a republic. The borderlands of the empire, those were always volatile. Skirmishes with the tribes were regular, uneasy peace sometimes brokered, but true control, that remained elusive. The 1st century AD, Roman dominance was still mostly unchallenged across the empire. Yet the border skirmishes, the raids on villages, they were a constant thorn in Rome's side. Then came the Battle of the Teutoburg forest. 9 AD, a crushing defeat for the Romans. 3 entire legions ambushed, wiped out. It was a wake-up call. These weren't just uncivilized savages, they were a real threat. For the next few centuries the relationship was tense. Emperors like Marcus Aurelius clashed with the Marcomanni and other tribes along the Danube frontier. Sometimes Rome would win, pushing them back. But with each conflict, the cost grew higher. The legions were becoming strained. See, the problem for Rome wasn't just that the barbarians were tough fighters, it was that their numbers seemed endless. For every warrior that fell, another took his place. Rome, on the other hand, well, their population was dwindling. Their focus was shifting inward. The old legions, the heart of their military might, weren't what they used to be. That's the stage, a weakened empire facing a relentless enemy. That's why, as we enter the 4th and 5th centuries AD, the barbarians aren't just raiding anymore, they're migrating. Whole tribes, Goths, Visigoths, Vandals, seeking refuge within the empire's borders, sometimes violently. And that's what finally tips the balance. The reasons for the barbarian onslaught were complex and intertwined. It wasn't just one thing that brought Rome down, but a chain of events and a decaying foundation that couldn't withstand the pressure. There was the desperation factor. Life on the northern fringes of Europe was harsh. A bad harvest, a brutal winter, all it took was one poor season for tribes to be on the brink of starvation. Rome, with its fertile fields and thriving cities, looked like a land of plenty. Then there were the Huns, a force of nature, ruthlessly efficient. Their arrival in the east sent a shockwave through the barbarian tribes. Those who weren't conquered were forced to flee, putting a relentless strain on the Roman border. The empire was suddenly dealing with not just raids, but with displaced, desperate people seeking refuge by any means necessary. Rome, weakened from within, saw the writing on the wall. Some emperors tried making deals, granting tribes land in exchange for military service. But these were desperate measures, stopgaps against a rising tide. The empire suffered from corruption, its once mighty legions were depleted, and its wealth was slowly draining away. And finally, there was something the Romans couldn't defend against: ambition. The Germanic tribes weren't just hungry and scared, they saw Rome and envied it. The riches, the settled life, the very power Rome wielded, what had been raids turned into a fight for a piece of the pie. The sacking of Rome in 410 AD wasn't just a military victory for the Visigoths, it shattered the image of Roman invincibility. The fall of Rome was a drawn-out process. It wasn't an overnight collapse. But once the cracks started showing, they became chasms. The empire that had stood for so long couldn't withstand the storm. The fall of Rome, it marked the end of an era. We call that following period the Dark Ages for a reason. Much was lost. Knowledge, technology, the systems and infrastructure that had held a vast empire together. But some things endure. Christianity, which was persecuted in Rome, thrived in the new kingdoms that emerged. Even the languages of modern Europe owe their roots to Latin, the tongue of the empire. And those Germanic tribes, many of their descendants would form the foundations of Europe as we know it. So did the Germanic tribes destroy Rome? Well, partly, but they also transformed it in ways that echo to this day. We should remember that history isn't a clear-cut tale of heroes and villains. It's messy, complex, and incredibly fascinating. If you're hungry for more history, hit subscribe and let me know in the comments what dark corners of the past we should explore next. Until then, stay curious, my friends.